Before there was time, before there was sound, before there was anything at all, there was God. The universe lay silent and unformed, wrapped in his infinite thought. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis 1 verses 1-2. In the eternal hush, God spoke, and his voice was light. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Genesis 1 verse 3. Light burst forth from his word, dancing across the void, revealing water, sky, and earth. And God saw that the light was good. The first goodness, the first day. On the second day, he stretched out the heavens, the endless blue that would one day hold the stars. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Genesis 1 verse 6. On the third day he spoke again, and the waters gathered themselves into oceans, and dry land appeared. Mountains rose, valleys deepened, and flowers burst from the soil. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind." Genesis 1 verse 11. The world was green and living, but empty of voices. On the fourth day he hung lamps in the heavens, the sun for the day, the moon for the night, and the stars for signs and seasons. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. Genesis 1 verse 16. The fifth day came, and he filled the waters with life, creatures great and small, from the smallest fish to the mighty whale, and the skies with birds that sang in joy. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply." Genesis 1 verse 22. And on the sixth day he formed beasts for the land, lions, oxen, serpents, and every creeping thing. The world was now full, yet heaven was not satisfied. Creation was ready, but creation needed a heart. Then the Lord said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air." Genesis 1 verse 26. And from the dust of the ground God shaped a man, form divine yet fragile. The Eternal knelt and breathed his own life into the clay, and Adam opened his eyes. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. Genesis 2 verse 7. Adam looked upon creation with wonder, the rivers, the trees, the sky, and his spirit rejoiced. God placed him in a garden called Eden, the crown of all the earth. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Genesis 2 verse 8. Eden was paradise, filled with color, sound, and light, for rivers flowed from its heart. Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates. Its air was fragrant with life, its soil alive with song. In its center stood two great trees. Deciduous tree, the tree of life, shimmering like dawn. Deciduous tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, mysterious, beautiful, and forbidden. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Genesis 2 verses 16-17. Adam listened and bowed in reverence. The world was his to tend, yet he was alone. Seeing Adam's solitude, God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him." Genesis 2 verse 18. The Lord caused Adam to sleep deeply. From his side, he took one rib and formed Eve, the first woman, gentle, radiant, and strong. When Adam awoke, he saw her and said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." Genesis 2 verse 23. Together they walked the garden, unashamed, clothed in innocence. They spoke with God in the cool of the evening, and all creation rejoiced in their harmony. But among the trees moved another, the serpent, subtle and ancient. Its tongue carried deception, its voice, honeyed lies. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. Genesis 3 verse 1. The serpent said to the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Eve answered, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it. Genesis 3 verses 2-3. The serpent smiled. Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3 verses 4-5. Temptation shimmered like sunlight on forbidden fruit. Eve's hand trembled, and she took and ate. Then she gave it to Adam, and he ate also. In an instant, innocence fell away, and the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. Genesis 3 verse 7. They sewed fig leaves together to cover their shame. The wind changed. The voice of God walked through the garden, calling, Adam, where art thou? Genesis 3 verse 9. Adam answered, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. The Lord's voice was sorrowful. Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? Genesis 3 verse 11. Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed the serpent, and the serpent smiled in silence. God spoke first to the serpent. Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Genesis 3 verse 14. Then, a promise of redemption. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Genesis 3 verse 15. To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. Genesis 3 verse 16. To the man, Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Genesis 3 verse 17. The Lord made garments of animal skin for Adam and Eve, the first sacrifice, the first covering of sin. Then he said, Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. Genesis 3 verse 22. He drove them out of the Garden of Eden. At its gate, he placed cherubim and a flaming sword turning every way, to guard the tree of life. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Genesis 3 verse 24. They walked eastward into the world, sorrowful yet not forsaken, because though Eden was lost, God's promise remained. A seed would come, a Redeemer, who would crush the serpent's head and restore what was broken. The sun rose on a new world, harsher, colder, yet touched by mercy. Adam tilled the soil, Eve bore life into it, and humanity began. The gates of Eden were closed, but heaven's plan was not. The same voice that spoke light into darkness would one day speak again. Let there be redemption.